So you're new to Genshin, you're doing some 10 pulls on the current banner, and while you don't have a 5-star, you do have...
Rosaria besides the most Un-Nun Nun? Well, Rosaria is a pull unloading cryo user who is very good at filling a support role as well as doing damage.
Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at the basics of Rosaria, how her kit works, we're going to touch on a couple different ways to build her. That stuff's mainly going to be for the next video, but in this video, we're going to look at how her kit works. So just like we do in every one of these videos, we're going to look at the current build of the current Rosaria that we are using. This Rosaria, this is my Rosaria, by the way, level 70 out of 80. I do need to get her up to 80. 16,493 HP, attack 1,500, EM 224. You'll see why so much EM in just a second. For her crit split, 72 over 168.9 with 154 ER. Her weapon, a level 90 R2 Deathmatch. Artifacts, 4-piece emblem, C4. And then for talents, 147. I need to finish leveling those up. Let's look at her passive. So her first passive, whenever she strikes an enemy from the back with her skill, you do get a 15 or a 12% increase in crit rate for 5 seconds, which is really, really good. For her second passive, whenever you do her burst, your other party members increase their crit rate by 15% of Rosaria's crit rate. So this allows her to do damage and be a bit of a support in a specific way. For her constellations, real quick, we're going to run through them since she's a 4-star. C1, whenever she deals a crit hit, her attack speed is increased by 10% and her normal attack damage is increased by 10%. This is going to be really good for on-field damage Rosaria. Her C2 is going to increase the duration of her burst, which is really, really good. C3 is going to be normal. It increases the level of her skill. C4, whenever her burst crits an enemy, 5 energy will be restored to Rosaria. It can happen once per time per casting of that burst. C5 is going to be normal. It's going to increase the level of her burst. C6, her burst is going to decrease enemies' physical resistance by 20%. This is going to be really, really good for running with like Eula. So now we're going to go look at how her normal attacks, her skill, and her burst works. So for her normal attacks, they're going to be pretty normal. They are really, really fast, actually. This is a faster polar moded character that does attacks. There is a niche physical build Rosaria, but we're not going to talk about that much in this video, maybe a little bit in the next one. But her normal attacks are actually really, really good. Her normal attacks are actually really, really fast. Her charge attack is the corkscrew variant, where she goes through, if this is the enemy, right, we go through the enemy, hitting all the enemies in that kind of line. Now her skill. Her skill is going to do an instance of cryo damage, but it's actually going to kind of teleport, quote unquote teleport, to behind the enemy. That is where that passive comes into effect, where if you hit an enemy from the back, then it's going to increase her crit rate. Her skill helps her do that. She kind of teleports behind the enemy and then hits them in the back, dealing an AoE kind of cryo damage. Now her skill does say that it does not work on a large enemy, like a boss or something like that. Now, as you can see here too from that passive, 84% crit rate, she did go up by 12% because of that passive. And that is going to be calculated into her second passive, which gives the increase in crit rate to the whole party. So for her burst is going to do an AoE cryo damage, where she's going to have this giant ice spear come down from the sky, hit the ground, doing cryo damage. It is also then going to pulse out cryo damage as well, doing a ton of cryo application, as well as doing a fair good amount of damage. This is how you increase the crit rate of your other party members. This, using her burst, is how she shares some of her crit rate to other party members. In a pure support Rosaria build, you would give her something. In a pure support Rosaria build, you would want to get to 100% crit rate, so that way you are giving the full passive over to your other characters. This is definitely a different kind. This is a damaging Rosaria, not necessarily a support Rosaria. If we were running Rosaria with like Eula, then we would have 100% crit rate, so that way Eula can get extra crit rate and we can put more effort into her crit damage. But we will talk more about those kind of builds, because that is a very niche build specifically for Eula. We'll talk more about that in the next video. So for an early game artifact set, 4-piece Exile is going to be really, really good. Rosaria's utility, a lot of her utility comes from her burst, so you want to make sure that you have it available as often as possible. Having the extra elemental energy or elemental energy recharge, gosh, it's been a week. An energy recharge, having the extra energy recharge from Exile is going to be really, really good for Rosaria, as well as the 4-piece is going to give energy to your other characters when she uses her burst. For main stats, right? On your Sands, you've got like 3 options. I'm running an EM Sands to get 4-piece emblem. You can run attack, you can run EM, you can run energy recharge, whichever one you're kind of in more need of. Rosaria, so I like using Rosaria in a melt team, which is why I have an EM Sands on her, because having that EM for the melts is going to be really, really good. But an attack Sands or an ER Sands would also work because it is emblem. For the Goblet, cryo damage, Goblet, I need to level this one up. For the Circlet, crit rate or crit damage, depending on what you can do and still have a ton of crit rate. This Rosaria, I think earlier, had 86%. If I had a crit rate Circlet on here, that would easily go up to 100 using her skill passive. If I was much more focused on trying to get this to be a support Rosaria, I would be running a crit rate Circlet, not a crit damage Circlet. For weapons, I am running a level 90 R2 Deathmatch. Deathmatch is a phenomenal weapon for Rosaria. It is also a Battle Pass weapon, so you can get this at any time if you pay for the Battle Pass. So this is a really, really good option, and I wanted to touch on it in this video. For other options, you do have 3-star White Tassel, which gets up crit rate. The passive, you're not going to use so much. It's normal attack damage, but like that would be on-field Rosaria, right? This crit rate can be really, really good for passing that crit rate on or sharing that crit rate to your other characters. For some other options, if you need energy recharge, you always have Favonius Lance, which goes really well. Its passive works really well with having 100% crit rate on Rosaria because you'll be able to use that passive a ton. Now, of course, you do always have the Catch, which is one of Rosaria's best weapons to use with emblem. So if you're using damage Rosaria and you have a high enough crit rate without needing a crit rate weapon, the Catch is super, super good. So to kind of finish out the video, I wanted to mention some of the various niche uses of Rosaria that will go much more detail into the next video, right? So we have burst damage Rosaria, which this is using emblem, using something like the Catch, using something like Deathmatch to get up the crit rate. This is more of a hybrid build, right? I'm not stacking a ton of energy recharge. I would be trying to get an ER Sands to do that, which I definitely could do. I need to level up an ER Sands from emblem. But she is also getting melts in this team, so this is going to be really okay to have an EM Sands. The other kind of much more pure support role for Rosaria is going to be Rosaria with Noblesse, so that way we can give an attack buff to our other characters. Having 100% crit rate and as much ER as possible, so that way we can just drop her burst, transfer crit rate, or share crit rate to somebody else, and allow specifically somebody like Eula, and allow them to use their burst a ton. Specifically Eula or like Fremine, because of that physical resistance drop. You, of course, can do something really, really niche and do like on-field physical damage Rosaria, or you can do something like Blizzard Straya Rosaria. There are a lot of different options and a lot of different ways that people play her. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or somebody else will be sure to answer it. I'll see you in the next one.